I'm Eduardo Garza, and I'm a multimedia artist. I live here in San Antonio, and this es Una Plática. Una Plática.
Es una plática.
Say plática.
Y una plática.
Una Plática.
Well, as a child, I was raised on the border down outside of Eagle Pass in a small town called El Indio, and my father was a school teacher, and we lived on about 3.5 acres of land that were provided by the school system. And my father was creative, so he taught us to sit around the table in the evenings. We didn't have a lot of television at that time. And in fact, that was when televisions first started. It was still black and white. So he'd sit us around the table and we would, okay, just scribble on your paper, or scribble, and then see what's in there, and then develop that. So that was my earliest. I was probably around 10 years old. And then he would get me out into we'd cut down trees because we lived in the country, to clear the land to plant. And he'd take one of those tree stumps that was interesting enough and have me and my brother with a hammer and chisel it out so he could make planters out of those mesquite stumps. So that was part of my creative teachings. Also, of course, planting. That was a lot of busy work in the fields. So you see the land as a woods, and then you see it transformed into a field, and then you see it transformed again into a provider of food by working the land, by getting the soil, preparing it for seeds, and then watering it. So that was a lot of developmental stuff towards being creative. Well, I called myself a Chicano because it applies the indigenous phrasing, the XIA, which is Mexico in the old Nahuatl language. And as Chicanos, we decided to adopt that as a tie to our ancestral past. Not that all of the Chicanos are Aztec. I'm Apache and Yaqui by descent, and also Mexica by my great-grandmother. So applying that Chicano to our character and ethnicity, so to speak, or nationality, is tied to our indigenous roots. A lot of people think it's rebellious. Well, it's actually not so rebellious if you consider that man is a warrior type of thing. That's how they conquered all of this land and made it Texas. So we have that warrior spirit as well to acquire what we want, what we need to survive. As far as my art is concerned and how people view it is not so much personal as it is, it is personal, but it's not done in order to sell or to make people think something or other. It's something that I do just because this is what I do. As an artist, I draw almost every day, pen and ink, charcoal. I use a lot of coffee in my drawings and natural products. Yesterday I did a little piece with the tuna of the nopal. I was out by Applewhite and I harvested some cactus pears, and I love the color of it when you apply it on paper or canvas. So I was doing that yesterday. So it's not necessarily important to me how people view my art. I like to think that they like it, and if they do, then I'm happy. And like John Lennon, one of the Beatles, said, and I live partly by this, is he said, if it works, we're happy. If it doesn't work, we're not sad. So I like that. I accept people's reaction to my work or non-reaction to my work. I know that not everyone is going to appreciate what I do. And I learned that a long time ago. I was sitting I was about 13, 14 years old, sitting at a counter in a restaurant in Floridada or Plainview, one of those towns up north in the Panhandle. I was up there working as a migrant worker in cotton fields, chopping cotton, chopping out weeds, and my brother and I had a Saturday to go downtown and get some of that pecan pie that we'd seen in the window of that cafe. And we're sitting there, and the waitresses kept walking by us, back and forth, white waitresses. And then finally they're sitting over there like that, and one of them says, I guess they think we're going to serve them. My brother and I, we considered ourselves citizens, you know, Americans. And we got treated that way because of our color of our skin, our ethnicity. So I said, my brother said, hey, let's go, man. Let's get out of here. He said, no, I want some of that pie. I said, they're not going to serve us. Let's go. So we found another place that had pecan pie, and they served us, and they were white people too. So, you know, that imbalance in acceptance as a person taught me to not rely on what people think of me, but to rely on my inner self, how I feel about myself, and what my father and mother taught me about self-worth and about doing what you want to do as long as you don't hurt anyone. Be yourself. It's a part of the community. It forms and shapes a community. Centro Cultural Aztlán, when it started out, I was one of the instructors that taught a after-school program for the delinquent kids, you know, the ones that were sent to, what is it called? Juvie, you know. And I taught them to make flutes. I taught them to write poetry. I taught them to voice their opinions and get on the mic, you know. And we didn't have a microphone, but get in front of the class and present their work, play these flutes. We made 2 different huehuets, some Aztec drums. I taught them how to do that, how to stretch the hide, wet it first, all that. So that community was loose, you know. Not everyone was going, and that's the way these community services are. Not everyone will go there, but everyone benefits because people that go to the centers take what they learn from there out into their community. Even if one person in their family learns something from that person, that goes on to generations. My favorite program, well, I don't like to choose favorites because every event is important in its own self. So if I happen to go to an art exhibit, then that's the most important, that's my favorite, you know, because I like to do art. I like to see other people's artwork. So I'm not going to favor this over the fiesta that they have outdoors sometimes, where people are just milling around and there's bands playing and there's vendors and food trucks, you know. The culture is alive and you feel the energy. So that's important. And when I'm there, that's my favorite. Un tamalito caliente con frijoles, órale. That's my favorite. Well, if you want to pursue art as a professional career, do it. But don't expect to sell everything that you do. It's a very competitive world doing art. And some of the least expected people achieve greatness through their art. Well, in about 1995, 96, I started a, a group of writers, poets that was called Teatro Poesia. We would get together and have a writing session, and then we would all share what we had written. And over the years, that developed into, in 2006, October 2006, I decided that it was time to get that going again. That lasted for about a year. And then I decided I wanted to get that going again. So I went down to the Guadalupe Street Coffee on Guadalupe Street. Now it's a lawyer's office. And it was a cafe. And they let me set up my little microphone, and I brought my drum and my flute and my harmonica, and I would just sit around and invite people to do some poetry. So finally, after about a year of doing that once a week, people started coming around. I had a bass player, a guitar player, a drummer, and I was playing the drums. And we had people come in playing, harp, the violin, just all kinds of people started coming around, not regularly, but every week it was different. So we called it the Jazz Poets Society. And it was basically formed around writing new stuff, and helping each other to develop our writing skills. That developed into a band that is now called the Chromosomes, Los Chromies. And we perform once a week at Brick for a year now. In this October, it's funny how things happen in October. It'll be 1 year that we've been there at Brick down at the Blue Star Complex. And it's Blue Monday, every Monday from 7 to 10 p.m. We get a band, and we have the poets come up and we perform with the jazz poets. We've got a book that we've published, a chapbook of several of the jazz poets. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's very creative. It's all improv music. So we get a chance to just cut loose musically and improvise for each poem that's brought to the microphone. The painting in reference is a piece that I did called Cruzando, and it's an image of two, a male and a female, and they're covered in abstractions, and above them is the sky and different images of those who have crossed over into the other world, cruzando, or going across borders in order to get somewhere else for whatever reason. And underneath at the bottom, it's like a lot of people moving towards the viewer, cruzando. So that means crossing, whatever it might mean to you, crossing borders, crossing cultures, crossing your persinándote, whatever. Yeah. Sure, is a piece of palm wood. I was working as a tree trimmer back in the 1980s, and it pained me to be taking these beautiful tree stumps and just dumping them in the where they have a place to. Some of it was a burn pit where you could take all your brush, all your branches and troncos out there. So I started carving faces in them, and this one is a palm. I use a chainsaw, and then I'd finish it out with a hammer and chisel like my dad taught me. And I've got about maybe a little over a dozen of them left from the days that I was doing that. I've given some away, sold some, and left some to my children. I published a book 10 years ago. In fact, it's this year. It's 10 years that I had a fire at my house on Blessing Street, and it burned up. And I salvaged a lot of my work from there. It was devastating. So I lost a lot of my art and a lot of my antiques, heirlooms and whatnot. clothes. And that was a lesson in temporary existence, right? How you can't expect everything to be the same tomorrow as it was today because of the influence of nature and fire. So I wrote this book around, in fact, Carmen Tafoya, former poet laureate, assisted me in editing the book. So I thank you, Carmen. And Juan Tejeda, one of the director of the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center for a while, and also the director of the Conjunto Festival, and a bandmate of mine back in the 1900s. I was one of the drummers in his band, the Conjunto Aztlán. So he started his publishing company, Aztlán Libre, and he decided to pitch in along with George Cisneros from Urban 15, and his wife Catherine hosted a fundraiser for me at their place out on Presa. And Juan helped me publish the book, Carmen helped me edit it. It's a book of poetry and drawings, art, some coffee art and drawings from that time. So I'm real honored that they teamed up to help me get by, in those trying times. So that's the story of that book. I have another book that is a compilation of jazz poets from the, 2006, I believe. So, no, 2012. I'm not real sure. I have to look at it. But we continue to write and present our poetry every Monday at Brick with the Jazz Poets of San Antonio and Los Cromis Band.